You know what? Christian evangelicals are a very frustrating bunch. In my travels around YouTube watching atheist videos and the videos of those very evangelicals, I've noticed that atheists can become rather frustrated at the seeming incapacity of these evangelicals to understand or take any heed of any point or argument put to them. And whilst that frustration is understandable, the truth is frustration isn't a particularly useful emotion. So I thought I'd try and cast a little bit of light on this recalcitrance that these people express in the hope of perhaps alleviating some of that frustration and maybe modifying it towards something a little more, appropriate. Now, is the reason for this Christian recalcitrance just plain old garden variety stupidity? I don't think it is. I don't think that's the explanation. There may be one or two instances where the reason for that is in fact a kind of congenital stupidity. But it's not really about a lack of native intelligence on the part of such people. It's about a combination of three things that I'll go into briefly. And the first is that many Christians are incapable, because of their mental conditioning, of seeing beyond or outside their own worldview. They think that all meaning and truth and moral virtue resides within that worldview, and that anything that lies outside of that worldview must be devoid of those things. They quite literally believe this. And because of their conditioning, they're not able to perceive or conceive of anything outside of the framework of their worldview. These people have been conditioned to feel rather than to think. They operate in the realm of sentiment, not in the realm of reason and logic. If you've been conditioned to believe, for example, that all moral virtue and all moral judgments originally derive from God himself, then you simply won't be able to conceive of the alternative, that moral good and moral judgments arise out of human consciousness. You simply won't be able to see that point of view. Now, the second reason that Christians tend to be this way is that they actually believe that it would be a moral evil to understand the atheist point of view. And not just that, but they also live in fear of any potential understanding of that point of view. It's a bit like Clarice Starling walking into the maximum security facility to interview Hannibal Lecter. She wants to understand his point of view, but the whole time that she's talking to him, he's playing with her mind. And that's how these Christians feel about atheism. They fear that atheists are actually playing with their minds and will sort of literally drag them into the mental depths of hell or something. So they actually have a genuine fear of entering the atheist perspective in any real way. They fear that they may lose themselves. They fear that if they begin to understand the atheist perspective, that they may fall out of favour in some way with God. So there's a fear element in terms of how they engage atheist arguments as well. The third reason is that such people have a very powerful need to see themselves as good or virtuous persons. This also keeps them in favour with God. But to be able to see yourself as a good and virtuous person, you need something with which to contrast yourself. In other words, you need for bad and evil to exist, because you make those judgments and thereby reinforce your status as a good and virtuous person. So people with that need require there to be an enemy. They require there to be evil that they can judge and thereby feel themselves to be good and virtuous persons. In other words, they need their demons. And what better demon could there be than that which is the most directly opposed to their worldview? Namely, atheism. So these people have a powerful psychological need to demonize atheism at every turn, because this feeds their psychological need to stay in favour with God by making themselves into these good and virtuous people. If you combine those three things, you've got a very powerful psychological force operating in the minds of such people. So it's almost to be expected that they won't be able to take on board a single thing you say to them. So the next time you're dealing with these YouTube evangelicals and you can feel frustration arising within yourself, just keep these points in mind. Keep in mind that when all's said and done, these people simply cannot help themselves. The question of how we break through those barriers is one for which I have no immediate or definitive answer. I think the best you can hope to do is to simply continue to make your case and hope for an occasional miracle. Best of luck.